in my own observation, when you look at Nairobi County and Kiambu County and even Uasin Gishu, those are the counties that are fairly urbanized, like Nairobi is completely urban, and very literate people, cosmopolitan. But you have seen, these are also the counties that you have people I call free felons, criminals, drug dealers, and people with real financial scandals elected as governors, political bandits. So what is the explanation that you can give? You can only say that the voter, you also under the 2010 constitution, where sovereign power was given to the people, must also exercise that power in a responsible manner. But the bigger game changer is actually 2022 election. It is important, and because that's a historical fact, that when Kenyans elected President William Ruto, it is also important to remember that during the 2010 constitutional referendum, he was the leader of the No campaign. And if you go to the newspapers of those particular day, you would see this is a man who had real problems with the 2010 constitution. So that only after 10 years, you know, a constitutional implementation is something like might take a generation. And therefore, at the time that Ruto takes over the presidency, this is about 10 years or less after the promulgation of the new constitution. So you would have expected of him that he is going to complete the implementation of the constitution. And that's where the irony arises, that you cannot be able to expect somebody who did not believe in something to be the implementer. Okay. So that when today you see something like we are rolling back the gains, that increasingly we are trying to make Kenya look more and more like the Kenya of the 1980s. And even worse, it is looking more and more to copy the tactics in Sudan, the tactics of Yoweri Museveni's Uganda. It is for the obvious reason that you cannot be expected to say that you have a modernist constitution, but again you put it in the hands of somebody who never believed in it.
Yes.
It's scandalous.
And there's something you mentioned about the...
Renowned lawyer Kibe MUNGAI has called for more civic education in Kenya, especially on the issues of presidential power and the role of parliament. He believed that many Kenyans are still confused about what the president can do and cannot do under the 2010 constitution. According to him, this confusion has fueled unnecessary debate and tension across the country whenever political disagreement arises. Kibe MUNGAI explained that one of the most common misunderstandings is the belief that the president has the authority to dissolve a parliament. He pointed out that this is not true under the current constitution. The 2010 constitution creates a clear separation of powers between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, and that framework does not allow the president to take such action. For him, Kenyans must understand these boundaries to prevent misinformation from spreading. He further states that civic education is not just about teaching people to vote, but also about enabling them to understand how Kenya's government works. By learning about the limits placed on presidential power, citizens can hold leaders accountable without being misled by political rhetoric. Kibe MUNGAI views an informed public as a key safeguard in ensuring democracy functions as intended. Beyond presidential authority, he also praised the Constitution for the protection it provides to ordinary citizens, especially during times of abuse or injustice. He noted that Kenya's courts have played an important role in defending human rights, particularly when people are unlawfully detained or mistreated. The legal tool of hereby Kubas has been used effectively to protect citizens, showing that the Constitution is not just rhetorical, but practically in defending freedom. Kibe MUNGAI commended the High Court for standing firm in such cases, even when the circumstances were difficult. He said judges have shown courage and independence in a way they have responded to abduction, unlawful arrest, and threats against personal liability. This judicial vigilance, he argued, demonstrates that Kenya's system is capable of resisting abuse when institutions are allowed to work as designed. He connected this judicial role back to the importance of civic education, pointing out that citizens who understand their rights are more likely to demand justice and seek legal remedies when those rights are threatened. In his view, the combination of an informed citizenry and a strong and independent judiciary creates a balance that prevents the abuse of state power. The lawyer also highlighted how public debate on presidential power often causes unnecessary fear or confusion because many people lack clear knowledge of the law. He said that if Kenyans knew their constitution well, political argument about whether the president can dissolve parliament or take a unilateral action would not carry as much weight as it is. This knowledge is done would reduce the risk of manipulation by political leaders.
Even the public are not really fully aware of the kind of document they themselves gave themselves when they went for that referendum in 2010. That lack of a proper understanding of the provisions of this constitution has led to a level of civic engagement where Kenyans are not demanding that the sanctity of the document be maintained. Could that be part of the problem, that 15 years later, so many things are just being dropped by the way?
Precisely, but also, of course, it takes time for some of the Kenyans who lived for very many years under the old constitutional order to immediately understand what pertains to the new constitutional order. There is also the important questions of literacy. So you get yourself into a situation whereby you say the older generation, whether they are educated or not, they largely have views that are informed by the practices and interpretations of the old constitutions. For example, and I keep reading and I get very seriously embarrassed, you see even people who are lawyers talking about parliament has let down people, it should be dissolved. But the president has no power to dissolve parliament. So that now when even people who are lawyers and educated people get this idea of something that is not provided for in the constitution, it makes you worry now about the ordinary citizen. You also get the situation whereby the issues of rights awareness. During the time of Uhuru Kenyatta as president, there was considerable hostility to civil organizations. Part of the legacy of this hostility to civil rights organization was that the kind of civic education that could have been carried out was actually not carried out, so that we do not have a situation where compared to the 1990s of people being aware, one of the actual provisions of the constitution and the possibilities. But to their credit, and I must mention this, you get the situation whereby the younger generations, the Gen Z and the young millennials, seem to have a very good understanding of the constitution. And this is where you find a disconnect, that the Gen Z, for example, feel very empowered by the current constitution. You find the older generation, they still have these old fears of the government, so that when the Gen Z see, we can, if we all stood up, we cannot have tyranny in Kenya. The older generations are likely to cow when the tyrant unleashes GSU on them. So that those differences are there, but the good thing is that moving forward, assuming tyranny will not reign for too long in Kenya, there is a chance that we are going to have a generation that has grown under this new constitution and with the right political and civic attitudes towards the governance systems. But those challenges where there is the dichotomy of age groups are going to persist for a while.
Right. Allow me to welcome Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo to this conversation.